everyone, today is another Q&A session with me where I sit down and answer all of your questions. This month they were very, very good as always, but some of the questions asked require their own videos. So if I do get to one that does require some more elaboration, I'll give you a bit of an answer just to start us off, but I don't want to ever rush through an answer because it doesn't benefit all of you. So I will promise a video to you on that particular topic in the future. So just be aware of that. And as always, I will not be reading your names. These are anonymous. Can you describe what your summer intensive audition for SAB was like? That was a very long time ago, about 10 years. I was 15. And basically, with SAB, as most summer auditions, they will split you up by age. So you'll have, I believe it's 12 to 14 and then 15 to 18 age groups. In the younger SAB auditions, they do not require you to wear pointe shoes. It's just a basic technique class. But in the older ones, you will need to wear them at the end. They do center on flat, I believe, and then you put your pointe shoes on. Again, this was 10 years ago, so I'm not entirely sure if this still holds true. But you know, and then there's often the things where people say, well, they came around and looked at my feet and my extension. I do remember them looking at my feet, but it wasn't that big of a deal. It's just a basic normal class. You wear your number. Older girls put on the pointe shoes at the end of class. What is company life like? For example, do corps members ever become friends with principals? Absolutely. I can't speak for other companies, but I would imagine it's very, very similar from people I know. Everybody's friends with everybody. Your rank really doesn't matter. I would assume in Russia it's probably different, but here in America, I know New York City Ballet, P&B, Miami, ABT as well. Everybody's friends with everybody. I had some great friends who were principals when I was young, and then when I became a soloist, we were still friends, and I was still friends with corps members. So it really doesn't matter what your rank is as far as your friends go. And the company life, you know, the thing about being, especially in New York City Ballet when I was there, is you're with these people 6 days a week, all day long. When you tour, you're on tour together. You really become a family. Even, you know, like all families, there are problems between people, and you're not always fans of everybody, but at the end of the day, everybody's a family. You know, the glass and the pointe shoe type thing, there was not a lot of that at all. There really wasn't any of that. Obviously, there was some jealousy here and there, people getting parts and things. But the wonderful thing about New York City Ballet is that there's so many opportunities. There's so many ballets. They do more than anybody. So a lot of people got opportunities, especially during Nutcracker. It was like the season where everybody got a chance. So it's not all cutthroat as it seems. Yes, there's jealousy. Yes, there's problems. But that's with any job. But as far as friends go, you're friends with everybody. In your audition tips video, you said you sat in on a summer intensive audition for SAB, and you said that they couldn't take one person at all. If your city is one of the earlier auditions for the summer course, would you have a better chance of getting in? Straight honest answer, yes. Go, especially with the bigger schools. If you really want to get in and you're really passionate about getting in, go to the one of the early auditions. Even if it's not your own city, if you can fly, if you have the ability to fly somewhere, go early, especially with SAB. They're doing a lot of international auditions nowadays, and those are fairly early on. So by the time they get to the later cities on the audition tour, there are no more spots, no more dorm spots, no more class spots. I did hear this year at SAB there used to be 6 levels, now there are 9, so they are trying to take more people. But if you can audition early, it will really, really help you. Is it hard to change from classical to Balanchine style for most people? I think it depends. Balanchine technique was actually, obviously Balanchine was Russian, and there were a lot of, at the very early days of SAB in New York City Ballet, there were a lot of Russian teachers. And so it kind of is very similar to that and the classical. There's not that big of a difference. I would say the arms are the most different. But it just depends on the person. I think if you have the right teachers or you're in the right environment, it won't be a problem. I know when I went to SAB for the first time for the year, I was very much a classical sort of, you know, bent-kneed fourth and all of that type dancer, but they completely changed me. So I wouldn't worry so much about changing styles because, again, they will know what they're doing. How do I go about researching ballet companies that would be realistic for me to audition for in the future? because my teachers told me, while I have potential for a career, it won't be with the top tier company because of my current age and level of technique. There are so many companies nowadays that, it used to be that there were the big ones and now the small ones didn't really matter. There are some really fantastic smaller companies. So I wouldn't worry so much about, it won't be in the big ones. Just go online, just Google maybe companies in your area. Some really great smaller tiered companies, smaller companies. Nashville Ballet, Colorado Ballet, Ballet West. Obviously, you all know about Ballet West. They are getting bigger, but they were considered not as big when I was younger. Carolina Ballet, they're becoming really, really, really good and really bigger, but they're still not as big as the big ones. Just do your research online is the best place to try. But you have to figure out, again, it's about the auditioning thing, where they might not have slots or they do have slots. So just do your research online is the best way to go about it. When is too late to become a ballet dancer? That's a very good question. I don't think there is a set age. Ballet companies do hire early. I've talked about that before. They love 17, 18, 19. But I have heard of people who have gone to college and then auditioned 22. The key is, though, you have to have good enough technique. Be willing to meet the requirements to be a professional. But I would say if you haven't danced anywhere by, this is tricky, I'd say maybe 25. If you've never been a professional at all anywhere, that might be a bit late. To just join a company for the first time. In my case, I am 25, but I have had a career previously. I have been a soloist with the New York City Ballet. So for me, trying to start in a new company is not as if I've never danced before, never been a professional before. I've had fantastic roles. I have a big resume. So if you're in that situation, if you're changing companies, I don't think age is a problem. If you are new to audition and have never been in a company before and you're around 24, 25, that might be a bit late. Are there any professional secrets you can share with us? I'm assuming you mean about tips and tricks for the business. I think I'm going to do a separate video on that because there's so many secrets. Everything from technique secrets to performing secrets to little things here and there. As far as professional, just one right off the top of my head. This is kind of a random one, but obviously every performance you wear pink tights with the shoes over the tights. Most of us cut out the toes and the heels so we can still feel our shoe, so there's not that tight barrier. I think they make tights like that nowadays where you can cut out that already have pre-cut toes, but most of us cut the toes, cut the heels, so we can still actually feel our shoes and feel the floor, and it doesn't feel kind of bizarre. I'm sure you've all experienced that. Once you put the pink tights over your entire foot and put the shoe on, it's an entirely different feeling. So most of us cut off the toes. But I will do a whole video on that because I can't think of any other things right now, but I'm sure there are a lot to tell you. I wanted to ask if you think that dancers with hyperextended legs should stand with the heels apart in first position. Fantastic question. I will be doing a hyperextension video. I have hyperextended legs big time. A lot of people have asked me about this. It's a very popular topic, so I will be doing a video on that. But I think it depends on your school. I have very, very hyperextended legs, and I do now stand with my heels apart in first position just so my leg is straight. But I think it depends on what your teacher wants. For example, with the balancing technique, they want your heels together, bent knees or not, just the aesthetic. I'm not sure about the classical schools or the classical companies. I've seen a lot of dancers have the heels apart in first position. So I think it's just a preference thing. I do it now because I like feeling my whole leg straighten up. With me, when my heels are together in first position, I feel like I'm in plie. So it doesn't work for me anymore. I do separate my heels in first position. And if you've watched any of my bar videos, you'll notice that. So I think it's a preference thing. But I will be doing the hyperextension video at some point. How do you learn to turn on new Pointe shoes? Because I'm always too scared to turn on them. I was too when I was a student. I was terrified of new Pointe shoes. But I will tell you, as you become older and you become a professional, you're in new shoes so much that it does become like second nature to you. Now I can put on new shoes and have no problem. Because at City Ballet we went through sometimes 2 pair a day, you had to get used to it. You know, sometimes with with ballet, say Sleeping Beauty, I wore one pair for Act 1, one pair for Act 2. So you just have to, you just learn as you go. But for a new student, what I would do is once you put them on, do a lot of releves. Maybe just hold on to the bar and just stand on point and just kind of go back and forth like this to sort of break in the box a little bit. Just break it in a little bit. Don't put them on and start turning. Do some releves, sort of break in the box a little bit first, and that should help you use some rosin so they're not as slippery. How would you suggest learning about different styles of dance if you are in an area where it's hard to get training outside of your home studio? Another very, very good question. The good thing about this day and age is it is the day of YouTube. It's the day of the era of the internet. So it's not, 10 years ago it was very, very hard to see other companies, to find out other things. The internet wasn't as big. I don't remember when I was a student having any YouTube videos at all of any dancers. Now I think if I had, I'd spend my life watching them and not going to class. So it's probably a good thing. But I do think now with the internet it's very, very easy. If you're a balancing company, Google Royal Ballet on YouTube, or vice versa. Or if you're trying to learn the Russian style, maybe Google them. There are some books nowadays too. I know that Suki Shore, who was a teacher at SAB, did put out a book. It was probably about 10 years ago, maybe 11, 12 years ago. That's called, I think it's called Balancing Technique. I'll have a link to it on Amazon below. But there's some just other books out there, other videos out there. Again, YouTube is a fantastic resource, obviously. I don't know too much about the Russian style. If you're trying to learn the Russian style, I'm not the person to ask about that. But I think you can do your research online these days. I will be moving to New York City to continue my dance training soon. Can you give me any tips for living there? Very good, congratulations, that's very exciting. There's a big misconception about New York that I think anybody who's actually lived there will agree with me. Living there and visiting there are two entirely different things. I never left my little, 6-10 block radius. For most of the time I was there, I was always constantly busy, either at SAB or at New York City Ballet. So I have never visited the Statue of Liberty. I've never even been to the Empire State Building. I mean, I've never done any of I've never ridden the double-decker bus or anything like that. So it's entirely different thing to live rather than visit. But as far as living there, make sure you have good shoes. That's my biggest tip for dancers who live in New York City. Do not walk around with terrible shoes and then expect to have your feet feel good in class or feet feel good when you're performing. Most of us a lot of us wore tennis shoes just on a day-to-day basis. Ballet flats that are supportive. Sometimes when we were injured, we had those Dansko clogs. I don't know if any of you wear those, but those were the shoes that they recommended if we were injured. So just make sure that if you're walking around a lot, you have very, very good shoes. Find little places to eat that you're comfortable with, that you can get something, or make sure you have a nice grocery store. Don't buy awful, food, because you're going to need to nourish your body. So make sure you know where everything is. But other than that, I think just really enjoy what you're doing. To continue your training there is so exciting. So make sure you're taking good classes. Steps is great, Broadway Dance Center, City Center. So just, my main tip though is to have good shoes and do not wear heels all day long. I'm sure you don't anyway, but just make sure you have good shoes. A lot of times when I take class with certain teachers at my studio, I don't get any corrections and it feels like the teacher doesn't even notice me. I work my hardest, show up for class on time, follow the dress code, and pay attention as best I can. Is there maybe a reason I'm not getting any feedback, and is this a bad thing? That's always tricky because a lot of people deal with this. If you're doing all the right things, sometimes, and I'll be honest, a lot of teachers are not the best and they have favorites. They play favorites. It's human nature. I think the first thing to do is maybe set up a meeting with them. Maybe ask them if you can talk to them after class or on a day before class, possibly. But the thing about it is, even if you're not getting corrections, and I think I've told you all this before, make sure you're applying everyone else's corrections, because you could be doing something without knowing it. So just take every correction as your own. I would talk to them. Don't let a year go by without saying something, because this is your training. It's your career. If you're not happy, if you're not getting enough training, it's no skin off their teeth. It's a problem for you. So make sure that if you feel you're doing everything correctly, you're not messing up in class, you're not goofing off, and they're not correcting you, I would maybe talk to them. Or maybe if they're not responsive and they're not helpful, it might be time to find another studio. Because again, at the end of the day, it's your career. So do everything you can to further it. When do you know you're ready for company auditions? And can someone who is in their late 20s audition? This is kind of going back to the previous question earlier. When you know you're ready, as far as technique goes, is you can get through an entire ballet class without having any big problems. Obviously, if you fall out of a turn accidentally, or you slip or something, that's a problem. But if you are not picking up the combinations quickly, if you're not getting through them without having any problems. I don't mean perfect technique, but if you have to stop and readjust and think about what you're doing, or you don't feel your jumps are strong enough, you're not ready. As far as the late 20s audition, as I've said before, in my situation, I have had a career, so I am in my mid-20s, will be auditioning again. That's not a problem. I think late 20s, it might be a bit late, but unless you have phenomenal technique, the worst thing you can do is audition and they can say no. So don't ever think, am I ready, am I not, no. Go ahead, go for it, try it, because you'll either get great feedback, you'll get the job, or you'll realize you need to do a little bit more work. You have what are you to lose if you were to just go audition? Because that's really the only way you're going to know, is to see yourself in comparison with other dancers in the audition, in your class. So I would say audition, go for it, and then take stock. If you do a bunch of auditions and you're not getting good feedback and you're not getting them, or you see other people who are far more developed in their technique than you, then maybe that means you're not, it's too late. But otherwise, go for it. Audition and see what happens. That's really the only way you're going to know. Have you heard of any colleges that offer a strong ballet program? Yes. Indiana University is a fabulous one. A lot of people love that. SMU, Southern Methodist University, I know it's a very, very expensive school, but they have fantastic teachers there as well. My cousin, who is at the San Francisco Ballet School, is going to a college in South Carolina. So they're just fantastic colleges all over the place. It's not as if you're not going to dance in a company, it's not going to happen for you. So I would do your research. Again, I'm not the best person to ask for that, but I know Indiana is great. It's probably the one of the top ones. So again, just do your research about all of that. That's the beauty of, again, I know I said this earlier, you have the internet. So just go on there and do a little bit of research. Don't depend on companies and colleges coming to you. It's your career. They're not going to come to you. They're not going to offer you things. You have to go out and look for it. You have to go out and make the effort. And so, again, nowadays it's very, very easy, so I encourage you all to do that. I know you said we should say thank you after an audition, but should we shake their hands? Or does that go along with the whole don't be obnoxious thing? I think it depends. If they're behind a table, don't go over and try and shake their hands. I mean, if you just sort of play it by ear, see what everybody else is doing, it's not a bad thing. It's not being obnoxious. The thing that's being obnoxious is, that kind of thing. And did I get it? And what did I do wrong? And when will I know? And blah, 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 blah. I would, if they're shaking hands, great. If not, don't. It won't harm you one way or the other. This kind of goes along with the next question that says, I was wondering, would the summer intensive or school you're auditioning for get annoyed with you if you ask them things to work on afterwards? I would say absolutely yes. Do not go up and ask them questions afterwards, because not only does it not help you, they have to, even if they're taking notes during the audition, they have to sit there, go back. As soon as the audition is done, they want to sit there and remember everybody, know who they're going to take, write things down. If you come up and distract them, they're not going to be happy about that. They really want to go back to their seat and figure out what they did. Plus, auditions these days tend to be so crowded that if you do it, then somebody else is going to do it, and then there's 50 other kids who are going to do the same thing, and that makes them very frustrated. They like to teach the class, teach the audition, say thank you to all of you, and then go back and figure out. Ordinarily, with auditions, they decide right then and there who they're going to take. It's not a 3 days later thing. It's not a week later thing. They'll decide right there. So they really like to focus on that. So I would say thank you, maybe shake their hand, as I said, but don't go up and ask questions at all. Why do ballerinas retire in their mid-30s? Is it possible that they will find a regular job related to dance? I think the main reason about mid-30s, or the typical average for a ballet dancer to retire is probably anywhere between 35 to 40. If you make it past 40, you're special. But the biggest reason is because your body doesn't work as well as it did when you were younger. You can't get your legs up as high. You can't, your muscles don't fire like they used to. Your joints really start to hurt because of all of the pounding your body has had over the last 20 years. Pointe shoes really are not that great for your joints. And the other thing about it is the audience is paying to see fantastic performances. They don't particularly want to see a ballerina who can't get their leg up to arabesque 90 degrees anymore. They don't want to see a ballerina who struggles to get through it. And honestly, by the time you're past 35, it becomes a struggle. A lot of dancers have knee problems and hip problems. The guys have shoulder problems and back problems. So I would say it's because there's a certain standard. They're paying to see you. It's an aesthetic art. So if you can't get your legs up anymore, if it hurts, if it's a struggle to watch, it's mostly about the public. But again, it really starts to hurt. But believe it or not, ballerinas are ancient compared to gymnasts and skaters. You see the Olympics, and it's somebody says, "Oh, she's 20 years old. She's a veteran." You're 20. And you're considered old as a gymnast. So for us, I'd say about 38, 40 is, they're a veteran. A lot of famous dancers, though, Margot Fontaine is one of them. She danced into her 50s. We had a beautiful principal, Kira Nichols, at the New York City Ballet, retired when she was, I believe, 48, 49. And she was fantastic up until the day she retired. People were saying, you shouldn't retire. So it just depends on the dancer, but I would say that's the age that things just don't work as well, and the audience is paying to see a good performance. So, will they find a regular job related to dance? Absolutely. Most go on to become teachers or ballet masters in the company, meaning they rehearse the dancers and set the ballets. A lot of them go on to start their own schools. It just depends. Some dancers, when they're done, they say, I'm done, I can't do this anymore, because it's very hard for them to be around it and not want to be out there on the stage. So I think that's probably 50-50. Some dancers do and love it, some dancers don't. Can you explain the difference of classical ballet, RAD, Balanchine, and Vaganova? And could you do a video describing the different ballet styles? I will do a video on it as best I can. Again, I'm not the pro on this, so I would encourage you all to do your own research for this. I was mainly trained in Balanchine and Cicchetti. I have not been trained in Vaganova at all. I have no idea about the specifics of that. So I might do a video. We'll see how it goes. It depends on how knowledgeable I am. But I will try and do one. Can you share your story from being a student to a professional? I would love to, but again, it requires its own video. I have lots of photos I'd love to show you all, to show you that there's hope for everyone. There are some videos of me as a child that are just hysterical, and I look like I could never be a professional dancer ever. So I will do a video on that, I promise. It'll be highly entertaining. I want to know what your cross-training routine consists of and how often you do it. I think I promised you all a cross-training video. I know I haven't gotten to it yet. I will do it. Just to give you a basis, just throwing a quick answer at you. I do cardio. Most dancers do some form of cardio. Swimming tends to be the popular option. I don't swim. My shoulders get really bulky if I do. I do the elliptical because the treadmill is too hard on my knees and my shins. So I do the elliptical because it's sort of a fluid motion. A lot of people don't do the elliptical because of their knees. So it just varies, but I like the elliptical. I'll probably do it, right now I'm doing it 6 days a week because I am trying to get the rest of this weight off and get back on the stage. Performing season, it was lucky if I got in 1 day a week. But the rehearsal period as we call it, I would probably do it 3 times, maybe 4 times, trying to get my stamina back. So it just depends on how much performing I'm doing as to how much cross-training I do as far as cardio goes. Now, the other bit I do that I encourage all of you to do, that I'm probably going to do some sort of video on, is something like Pilates, gyrotonics. There's this new thing called Pure Barre. It's not very new, but some dancers are doing Pure Barre. It's sort of ballet-based class. There's another one called Barre 3. A lot of classes these days that they see the benefits of ballet, and so they incorporate it into the class. Those are all good. Pilates is the big one for ballet dancers, I would say, as a general rule. I tried to do it 1 or 2 times a week during the performance season. Nowadays, I'm really trying to do more because I'm getting back on the stage, because I'm trying to get back in shape. Again, it all depends on how much performing I'm doing or how much I need to get in shape. But I will do a whole separate video on that. There's a lot more to say. In a company like New York City Ballet, are you advised to use specific makeup styles and/or colors for certain ballets? Do they have a makeup artist at New York City Ballet and a hairstylist? And are there certain styles for certain ballets? Great question. When I was there, we had a fantastic makeup artist named Michael Avedon, who was the nephew of Richard Avedon, the famous photographer, and he was brilliant. He taught me everything I know. He taught most of the now older company members everything they know. He unfortunately left the company, and then we had a hairstylist who was wonderful. He's not there anymore, so there's new makeup artists, new hairstylists going in, all the time. They advised us on sort of the basic makeup for our face, how to do it for our particular face. But as far as colors were concerned for certain ballets, not really. Hairstyles, there were certain hairstyles for certain ballets. Every ballet has a specific hairstyle. It could be the high balancing classic bun, which most were. For example, also Juliet with the braids, Aurora was a high bun. Every ballet, you had to do your hair a certain way, specifically so everybody matched, but you did it yourself unless you had a huge role. For example, when I danced Juliet, my braids were all done by the hairstylist, the hair was all done, the makeup was all done, usually only for big roles like that though. Otherwise you did it yourself. And as far as makeup colors go, not really. They did not like, and neither do I hate this too, when you matched your eyeshadow to your costume. So if you're wearing blue and people will wear blue eyeshadow, doesn't look good. Don't do that. But we really never got criticized on it unless we weren't wearing enough or it was too colorful, especially for some of the Balanchine black and white ballets. We had to keep it very simple, but they really didn't specify that much. I was wondering if you could share a day of healthy meals which help dancers go through the day. I know I've promised you all the diet video. It's coming. This has been a little tricky for me though because it's a very delicate topic because I don't want to encourage dieting. So what I think I'd like to do is, like this format, you all write in your questions, your diet specific questions, and I will answer them to the best of my abilities and then go from there. Maybe I'll still include some of my own things that I do, but it's a very tricky topic for me. Everybody's different. You have to find what works for you. So if you have a diet related question, and I'll probably announce this several other times, please leave it in the box below. I'm going to do a diet video that way first. Maybe part 2 will be more of a meal plan kind of thing. But it's again a very tricky topic. So if you do have diet related questions, please ask them below. I will answer this one as well in that video. But again, it deserves its own video. Are there ever days when you feel like giving up? How do you handle doubts and days when you are just too tired to keep working? Let me preface this by saying every single professional dancer has these days. We're not machines. They're not anybody who is just absolutely wonderful all the time. I'm especially the person who asked this. Again, you all know I've had the illness, and there were many days, especially being very sick when I was, that I just thought, I can't do this anymore. This is just pointless. This is ridiculous. It's too hard. But the thing that kept me going is that I can't imagine doing anything else. I love being on the stage and performing that much that honestly, if I didn't have that in my life, I wouldn't really know what to do. So everybody's different on this. Again, you have to find your biggest motivation, why you dance, why you love it, why you want to be out there. But for me, it is honestly the love of performing and the love of becoming somebody else and just having, expressing myself through ballet. So I couldn't imagine my life without it. Because I'd say to my parents, this is too hard, and then they say, well, what are you going to do instead? And I'd be like, there was nothing else I want to do instead. So that got me through really, really, really tough days. But you have to figure out what works for you. How do you become more dedicated to dance, and how do you decide? You said at one point, if you aren't willing to commit to this 150%, it might not be the right career for you. I don't know yet if I want to commit to it a lot. That's a very great question. And it's absolutely true. I stand by what I said. If this is not your undying passion and you can't, as I said in the previous question, can't imagine doing anything else, can't see yourself not performing and not being in this business, I advise you to really think. Because let me tell you, and I'll be honest, I had a wonderful career at City Ballet. I was very much blessed and fortunate to be given the roles I was, and I still had a very, very hard time. This career is so difficult. People don't even know. You have to literally be willing to give up so much for it. You have to be, just on a day-to-day basis, get up, go to class, whether you like it or not, be in rehearsals, whether you like it or not. It's going to hurt. You're going to be exhausted. But at the end of the day, you still have to do it. And it's so, even your life outside of ballet, there's so many things you can't do because of it, or you have to do because of it. You have to keep doing your cross training. You have to eat healthy. There's just, the day-to-day grind of it is very, very hard, that if somebody didn't love it, I don't see how they could get through it. If you're not willing to commit to it yet, that's okay. I would advise you, though, by the time you are 16, 17, 18, you need to be deciding. Because otherwise it could end up, as I've said before, they like hiring early. But the other thing is, if you're new in a company, let's say you're 20 and you get hired into the company, and you're still not sure if you want to have this be your career, that's absolutely fine. What I would do is, if you're 16, 17, 18, 19, or just got hired into a new company, or you're thinking about it, commit to it 150% for 1 year. 1 year, see where you are. If you think, yes, I'm so glad I'm here, I love this, I can't believe this is my life, great. If you decide at the end of that year this is not for you, that's fine too, That's how you'll know. If you're on the fence, I would commit to it 1 year, and if you're still willing to do it, keep doing it. Now, if you're at the point where you say, oh, I don't want to commit to it for a year, then that's already your answer. If you're not willing to commit to it for a year and just see how far you can get to it, even in that short amount of time, if you're not even to start committing, then it's probably not the right career for you. But I would say, you know what, I'm going to give this everything I have for 1 year and see what happens. And if I love it and I want to keep doing this, then you'll know. If not, then you'll know as well, and you can do something else and have another passion, which is perfectly fine. A lot of times in the dance world, people make it feel like, well, if you're not, you don't have this undying passion, you're a loser. No, not everybody has to love ballet. There's so many other things, and this kind of goes along with the next question, which is actually my last question. How would you decide between becoming a dancer and being a doctor, or somehow doing both? What are my options? I know you mentioned some of your friends still dance but are not looking for a professional career. Let me say this, if you want to be a professional dancer in one of the companies, you cannot also be a doctor at the same time. You might be able to go to college. A lot of dancers go to college, take classes, but if you're a dancer, professional dancer, I cannot imagine nobody in New York City Ballet could also be something else. You have to be there all day long, every day, 6 days a week. So doing something like as big as that, even in some of the smaller companies I was talking about earlier, you have to be there. You can't really have another job like a doctor or something like that. You can go to school to work to become a doctor, so when you retire you can maybe go to medical school, or retire early and go to medical school, something like that. But when you're a dancer and it's your job, you really can't do anything else, because this is all consuming. Now, yes, I've mentioned my friend Riley. She is dancing right now. There is a company here in Alabama. This is the school I grew up. They have a youth company. And dancers dance through high school here and they perform. She's dancing through college. She's in college. They perform quite a bit, but it's not her job. It's basically every day after 3 o'clock because most of the girls are in high school or they're in middle school. So it's ballet after school, but it's also a company. She's doing that while going to college. That's fabulous. She gets all the performing experience. She gets all of the being on stage part of being a professional without actually being one. And that's the school I grew up with, which is fabulous. So when I was growing up, I was, still in middle school, but I was getting all that performing experience. But they stay, and yet she's in college. So that's something to look into. Maybe you can find a smaller company that does community performances, like community theater, if you want to be in plays or musicals, and still go to college. Or find some sort of smaller environment. This environment is perfect. Again, as I've mentioned, she can go to school at the same time and still dance. But as far as professional and being in one of the big companies, it's not really possible. You have to commit to it 100%. A lot of dancers do go to college and take classes on the side, but dance does come first. Ballet comes first. So it is kind of tricky. And again, as I said, if you're not willing to commit, if you don't know if you're willing to commit 100%, commit for a year and see what happens. That's really the best way to tell. Because a lot of people have done that. They'll say, I'm going to try this, and then they realize it's not the job for them, and that's perfectly fine. But I encourage you to try it first, because you never know what happens. So that's all the questions I have for today. I hope this really, really helps you all. I love answering your questions. They're so great. Every single one is fantastic. If I didn't get to your question, I promise I will in the future. I will be doing all those extra videos at some point to elaborate further. Be watching. I'm going to be much, much, much more active on Instagram. I know lately I've just been doing old performance photos or letting you know if a video is up. I'm going to be doing a lot more things there. I think some of the ideas I have, my leotards are very, very popular, which I have to tell you all, I'm kind of surprised. So I think I'm going to, at the end of every week, do sort of a what I wore that week on Instagram, ballet fashion-wise. I'm also going to do maybe, I think the little videos on Instagram are about 15 seconds or something. Maybe I'll pop in technique tips, or little technique points, 15 seconds worth here and there on Instagram. I just have a bunch of Instagram ideas, so follow me there. There's going to be a lot more there than there has been, so Kathryn_Morgan, be watching for all of that. I love you all. I hope this, again, helped you, and I will see you on Friday.